All right, welcome. Today we are diving into a huge topic, but one that's absolutely fundamental: ecology. We're going to be looking at the master blueprint for how all life on this planet is connected and how it all works together as this single incredible system. So let's just jump right in. So to get our heads in the right space, let me ask you a question. What in the world could possibly connect a volcano, a forest, and a fox? I mean, they seem like they're from completely different worlds, right? Well, believe it or not, the answer is what we're talking about today.
And there it is, ecology. It is literally the science of connections. Ecology is how we figure out that, hey, the rock from that volcano creates the soil. That soil lets a forest grow, and that forest gives a home and food to the fox. See, it's all about the relationships.
To really get this, we're not just going to talk about it. We are going to become architects. We're going to build an entire ecosystem from the ground up, piece by piece, using its blueprint to see exactly how everything fits together.
Okay, first things first. Any big project needs a list of materials. An ecosystem is no different. We've got to gather all our essential building blocks before we can even think about putting it all together.
So our list of materials is basically split into two big categories. Over on the left, you've got the biotic factors, that's all the living stuff, the plants, the animals, bacteria, you name it. And on the right, you have the abiotic factors, all the non-living things like sunlight, water, and soil. And you absolutely cannot have a working ecosystem without both. They have to work together.
Now, here's the really crucial part. These aren't just separate items on a checklist. They are all deeply, deeply connected. If you change one abiotic factor, say there's a huge drought and you lose a lot of water, that's going to have a massive ripple effect on all the living things that depend on it. It's like this delicate dance, and it's so important to understand that.
Okay, we've got our materials, but what powers the whole thing? What actually makes the ecosystem go? Well, that brings us to the next section of our blueprint, the power grid, or what we call the flow of energy.
The simplest way to see how this works is with the basic food chain. So the energy, which mostly comes from the sun, gets captured by plants. We call them producers. Then that energy gets passed on when a primary consumer, like this rabbit, eats the grass. And it gets passed on again when a secondary consumer, like our fox, eats the rabbit. It's a pretty straightforward path of who eats who.
But there's a really important rule here. As you go up each step in that chain, a ton of energy is lost. It's just not a very efficient transfer. And that's exactly why the bottom of the food chain, all those producers, has to be so massive. Without that huge foundation of plants, you just can't support the animals higher up the chain.
Of course, in the real world, it's never that simple, is it? That fox doesn't only eat rabbits, and rabbits aren't only eaten by foxes. It's less of a simple chain and way more like a messy, complicated, and totally interconnected food web, with energy zipping around in all sorts of different directions.
So, we have our parts and our power source. What's next on the blueprint? Well, now we get to the rules and regulations, the things that govern all the inhabitants of our ecosystem and basically keep everything in check. This brings up a pretty logical question. Let's think about those rabbits again. If they have all the grass they could ever want and no foxes around, could their population just grow and grow and grow forever? What stops them from just taking over everything?
The answer is a concept called carrying capacity. Just think of it like this. It's the environment's hard population limit. There's only so much food, water, and space to go around. The carrying capacity is the absolute maximum number of a species that an ecosystem can handle for the long haul without falling apart.
And what enforces that limit? It's a bunch of different factors we can call environmental resistance. You know, you've got predators pushing back on one side. You've got the reality of limited resources on the other. And things like disease are always a threat. All these pressures work together to keep a population from just exploding, making it hover right around that carrying capacity.
But what happens when there's a total disaster? You know, a fire or a volcano just comes in and rips up the blueprint. Well, nature has a built-in plan for that too. It's like a renovation plan. This process is called ecological succession. And it's this amazing, slow, step-by-step way that nature actually heals itself. It's how communities of life rebuild and change over time. It is nature's ultimate comeback story.
And there are two main types. Primary succession is when you're starting from absolute zero, like after a volcano leaves behind nothing but bare rock. Secondary succession is more like rebuilding after something like a forest fire. The soil is still there, so things can bounce back a lot faster.
But no matter where it starts, from bare rock or from existing soil, The end goal of succession is always to get to this stable, mature, and balanced state that we call a climax community. This is basically the finished, fully realized version of the blueprint.
So, as we step back and look at the whole ecosystem we've just built, the big takeaway is pretty clear. Ecology isn't just about listing off plants and animals. It's about understanding this deep and often invisible web of connections that ties every single thing together.
And why does this matter so much to us? Well, because when you finally understand the blueprint, you get the building blocks, the energy flow, the population limits, you can start to see how our own actions fit into this picture. We can finally see the ripple effects that our activities have on this incredibly delicate balance.
Which leaves us with one last, pretty big thought to chew on. We've learned that nature has this intricate blueprint, but as a species that can now fundamentally change that blueprint, we really have to ask ourselves, are we just another piece in the system, or are we now the ones holding the pen? What is our role, and what is our responsibility in drawing the future of these connections?